In today's video, we'll be using Vectr to create a realistic or semi-realistic looking food item. And so for our demonstration today, I have a hot dog here, which I brought in from the internet. I would suggest doing the same thing or draw one up so that you can upload it into your Vectr website. Again, we're using Vectr, vectr.com. So uploading your image here. You want to use this cloud with the up arrow to upload your image. So that gives you a base for you to trace your design to make it a little bit easier on converting your design or your photorealistic food item into a rendered vector image. So what we're going to be focusing on is trying to pick up on certain characteristics that we see in our food item. So in terms of our hot dog here, we have this gradation here on the bun. So we're going to be working on creating that, designing a gradient, using transparencies, also using the pen tool. That's going to be very helpful because it will let you get curved edges where the two objects meet, as well as having the curved edges here around the edge of the hot dog. Some other things are transparencies that we see like in these onions here. They're semi-transparent at certain points, as well as on the mustard here, there's a bit of a drop shadow, and the same thing underneath our hot dog. It'll help us make our food item feel a little bit more grounded in reality, being that it looks like it's placed on a surface. So that's what you want to try to do. You could also add a surface that it's going to be sitting on, like a plate or a bowl, depending on what you are creating. Maybe it's a placemat. Just make sure they are in the same viewpoint. So you don't want your plate to be looking over top of your food item, whereas the food item is looking from the side. They wouldn't really match up the design. So make sure they are sitting in the same direction. And then also we're going to try to be highlighting some of the different textures we might see. So like there's like sort of like these like bubble effects that are in the bread on the side, as well as like these like sort of like freckled designs that are in the hot dog. So we'll be trying to create those, create a sort of a surface texture to our design to help reference that sort of almost realistic or semi-realistic appearance that you would identify with your food item if you were looking at it, rather than like a vector or an emoji version where it's just like a single color all the way through. So these are some of the things that we're going to be working on today. So again, we're just going to go over some of the tools that you guys might be using. The rectangle tool, rounded rectangle, and ellipse tool here. Again, if you need to make any certain specific shapes, those are fine to use. I would highly suggest making all of your designs with the pen tool here, so that everything has like sort of a curved edge, or it forms and fits your actual design specifically, rather than just being like, here's a rounded rectangle that looks like a hot dog, but if you have it made with the pen tool, it'll look a whole lot more realistic. And when you're making your designs, don't be afraid to go around the edges here, go through the object. So if I was making this hot dog form with the pen tool, I'm going to go through the onions because I'm going to add the onions at the end. So it doesn't mean I have to worry about them right now. And so I don't have to go around the bun. I can cut right through it because I know I'm going to use that bun design to cover up part of my hot dog. So your design does not have to be specific to the just only what you see in your photo, but you can draw through your objects. This will help avoid any like negative spaces or like white gaps between your drawing that you create in Vectr or on Illustrator and the actual end result. So drawing through them and overlapping different pieces will prevent there being this like awkward gap between your 2 or 3 elements that you are creating in your actual drawing. So please do that. It'll cut down on any little mishaps you might have. So again, using the pen tool, I would highly suggest. That's probably most of your work will be done in this. The pencil tool will help make any like sort of shapes. But again, pencil tool is not as detailed as the pen tool. So if I was using this pencil tool and I wanted to create like these little lines here we see on our hot dog, so that line doesn't really read as well as you would hope so, because again, it's not as specific. It's a little bit more of a rigid and not as smooth. But if I did the same effect with the pen tool, I can click here and I can sort of make that curve so that now that like line that's in the casing of the hot dog looks a little bit more realistic, and I can give it a specific color when I'm working with it. And again, when you're using a color, this is the fill color. You don't need to have that. You're welcome to have it. I'll turn that off. But I want a border color. That's right now it's this black line. So I want to try to match that dark maroon color of our hot dog. And again, when you're using the this is the fill color is the top one, the one that's background. Make it invisible and opacity. And then border color is the outline color that surrounds your object. Again, these are your options. You can scroll through these, you can change whatever color you want, and then moving your little color finder here, it will change that color depending. But if you really want a specific color, just use this eyedropper tool, give it a second while it's searching, and now it has this little magnifying glass that you can just click on whatever part of your design that you want, and it'll make that color. Here's your drop shadows and inside shadows, and then overall opacity of your object. So those probably are going to be your main tools for this assignment. Again, you want to get as close to realistic as possible with including the limitations that come with Illustrator and Vectr. So we will be going through all these. We'll be using all these tools. And one other thing we will be using is a gradient. So let's make a gradient now so you can see how to make one. So if I use like a shape tool, it's in their background. So right now it's a solid color. But if you use this drop-down menu, you can fill it with an image, a linear gradient, or a radial gradient. Linear gradient will be if the design is left to right, up and down, from corner to corner, so on and so forth. A radial gradient is if the center of your design is one color and it fades outward. That's a radial one. So if it's more of like a circle gradient from so if it's like from the inside of a plate towards the edge of the plate, that'd be radial. If it was sort of more than like everything else, would be more linear gradient. So what we're going to use now is if we were to make this hot dog appearance, the bun, we'll be using linear gradient, this one here, because it's going from sort of left to right. We're going to use linear gradient. It's going to give you automatic fill, like an automatic color. You just go here and it gives you the options. It's already selecting this top color for you, so you can sort of move around what color you want, anywhere on the board or on the color swatches. But if you want something specific, again, same eyedropper effect still works. So you click on that, give it a second. So we're going to match that same, this is like the highlight of the hot dog bun. So it's right here. Go back to our linear gradient. Now we're going to click on this bottom circle here. So we're telling it that's the color we want to change it to. So we're going to use the eyedropper tool again. Now we're going to choose the dark part of the bun. So we're starting to get our gradient. If you want more than just these two colors, you can click back on here. You can just see where it's giving you this little white circle. You just click, and it gives you an extra color to add there. So say I wanted it to be blue or some other color, that's totally fine. But I want to make it sort of this brownish tone again. So now we have our gradient. So if we rotate it, we can start to get an idea of what it's going to look like. This is just a sample of our overall design. I'm going to redo this when I use the pen tool and I make the actual bun design. And I would suggest any color change in your object should be a different element you make in Photoshop, or sorry, in Vectr. So if there's a difference, like I tell it there's a different tone between this inside of part of the bread and the bread that's on the outside. So I would make those two separate pieces. If you have something that's like a different tone, like so I could tell that this part of this onion in the back here, like here's like sort of a light gray, and this is more of like a white gray part of the onion. I would make those two separate pieces because this has a different color tone than this one. Okay. So the rest of this video, it will be a montage of doing all these steps over and over again. Again, mostly using the pen tool, as well as creating elements with the fill color or the linear gradient.